Marinaro, the Sick Podcast on this Thursday night. I hope you're all doing well watching on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter. The Montreal Canadiens announced earlier today that Samuel Montembeault will get the start on Saturday night versus the Ottawa Senators. Everyone's going to have an opinion on that. I would imagine that our guest, Simo the Snake Boisvert, and after Snake, it's going to be Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette and HockeyInsideOut.com. We'll talk about that. Coincidentally, by the way, it is Samuel Montembeault's birthday today, so happy birthday, Mr. Montembeault. It's an interesting decision because, of course, Jakub Dobeš has won all 6 games in which he started with a record of 6-0, and Samuel Montembeault lost in Edmonton versus the Edmonton Oilers, and he has been struggling thus far this season. It's also an interesting decision because the Ottawa Senators, I believe, have scored a total of 17 goals in their last 3 hockey games. Juraj Slafkovsky has been doing well for the Montreal Canadiens, and Logan Cooley has been doing very well for the Utah Mammoth. He put up pretty good numbers last year, off to a really good start this year, and he signed, Cooley did, an 8-year contract extension at $10 million a year. That was announced yesterday. So it has some people talking, would the Montreal Canadiens have been better off if they would have drafted Logan Cooley instead of Juraj Slafkovsky? Slafkovsky went first to the Canadiens. Cooley went third in the draft at the Utah Mammoth. It's one of the things we're going to talk about with Simo the Snake Boisvert. He's coming up in just a couple of minutes right here on the Sick Podcast.
It's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick Podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K, 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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they work the young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast on this Thursday. How are you, everyone? And thanks for watching on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Simon the Snake Boisvert is going to join me in about a minute. And then after our conversation, we're also going to be joined by Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette. The Montreal Canadiens announced earlier today that Samuel Montembeault will get the start on Saturday night when the Montreal Canadiens host the Ottawa Senators. The Canadiens back from their 4-game road trip that saw the Canadiens win in Calgary, lose in Edmonton, win in Vancouver, and win in Seattle. They played 4 games in 7 days. They're back where the Montreal Canadiens are going to play their next 2 games at home, and they're going to play their next 8 of 10 at home as well. Once again, I talked about it in the intro, Samuel Montembeault's birthday today, so happy birthday to Samuel Montembeault. Clearly, it's an interesting decision. It's going to have a lot of people talking, and we're going to talk about that. I want to start also by thanking some of our sponsors. We'll start with Playground. Hungry for a deal? Eat well at Playground without breaking the bank. Monday, sink your teeth into a juicy 12-ounce ribeye steak with all the fixings for just $19. Tuesdays, dive into an all-you-can-eat Asian experience for only $25. Wednesday, savor a 6-ounce bacon wrap filet mignon with dessert for just $30. Thursdays, lobster surf and turf, only $22. And Fridays at lunch, get any sandwich, burger, pizza, or main for just $7. Delicious, outrageous. Visit playground.ca for details. Also, special thanks to the Geloso Beverage Group and those cans right in front of me, right there. La Bittt à Tibi. Their new Ultra Lager. It's a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer. Perfect for those cool fall days with only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can, available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. Ultra light, ultra refreshing. Without further ado, let's bring him in. He does some scouting in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, and you can listen to him on various, I shouldn't call it Quebec Major Junior Hockey League because it's the Quebec Major Junior Maritime League now, and he also does some podcasts, one of which is en français, ça s'appelle Mathias et le Serpent, and another one of which is in English, and it's called Trust the Process, that he co-hosts along with Shane Gaumont, and they do that on our network, actually, on Sick Media. Simon Snake Boisvert, who's a regular collaborator of mine on my show in French, weekdays at 10 a.m. As you can see, I'm actually wearing the French T-shirt that I wore earlier this morning when I hosted my show, and it says, Ça va bien. Comment ça va, Simon?
Your favorite song, isn't it?
Ça va bien, même quand il pleut, le soleil me tend la main, ça va bien. Comment ça va?
I'm doing fine. Yourself?
Good, very, very well. Thank you very much. We'll get to Montembeault a little bit later. I'd like to get your opinion on that. We're going to talk about a few things, one of which is actually Logan Cooley signed his contract extension, an 8-year deal times $10 million a year. Logan Cooley has put up some pretty good numbers over the past couple of years. Logan Cooley was part of that same draft that Juraj Slafkovsky was part of a couple of years ago. Slafkovsky obviously went number 1 to the Canadiens, and Logan Cooley went number 3 to the Utah Mammoth. And why don't we bring up Logan Cooley's stats right now? We'll start it off with Logan Cooley's stats. And there you have it. 1 year ago, actually a couple of years ago, in his first season in the National Hockey League, he had a 44-point season, extremely respectable. Last year, 65-point season. This year, 8 goals in 11 games, 12 points in 11 games. He is on pace for obviously over 82 points this season. That's unbelievable. In your first 3 years, it shows a constant progression. It actually shows him jumping in points by about 20 points per season. if he continues at the same pace. And now we'll show Juraj Slafkovsky's stats. Juraj Slafkovsky, in his first season, which was, he started in the league a year earlier than Cooley. He had 10 points in 39 games. The year after, he had 50. That's a beautiful progression. That's a nice jump. Mind you, it was in 82 games, but the year before he played 39, an injury-plagued season. If you would have doubled the games, it would have been 78, 20 points. He went from 82 games, 50 points, fantastic. Last year, a slight progression in terms of points. 1 point more in 3 less games, but 2 goals less, 3 assists more. And this season, he has 5 goals, 1 assist, and 6 points in 11 games. As you know, I'm a collaborator on Jean-Charles Lajoie's show on TVA Sport, weeknights from 5 to 7. I do an appearance every weeknight at 5:30 p.m. And Jean-Charles said something to me last night, and he said the Canadiens would have been better off drafting Logan Cooley because he could have centered a second line with Demidov, and the Canadiens could have had a guy like Bolduc playing wing on the line of Suzuki and Caulfield. It's an interesting comment. I'm sure it's a comment that a lot of people share. You covered this draft as you cover every draft, and you know them like the back of your hand, and that's why I have you on tonight. I'd love to get your opinion.
Okay, obviously it's a very valid point. However, this is a point that is being made in 2025. Now, I think most observers knew that Logan Cooley was probably the best pure offensive player in the 22 draft. So that was the opinion of a lot of observers and scouts, and I think they turned out to be right. Now, here's my point. Let's go back to 2022. The Habs, I don't know if they knew, but they probably had a good idea that they would have some very high picks for the upcoming years at the time. They actually got 3 in a row. They got a number 1 and 2 number 5s. Similar to what the Sharks and the Blackhawks have had over the years. Lots of top 5 picks. But when you draft a given year, like 2022, you're looking for a certain type of player, and especially in a year where there was a variety of players, but no one really stood out. There was no no-brainer a la Macklin Celebrini. So it was a very, very tough year to nail it when you think about it. There were defensemen, there were wingers, there were centermen, and all of them, you could make a case for them. And like Mathias Brunet said on our podcast last year, there was one team that had Pavel Mintyukov at number 1. So it goes to show you how all over the map this draft was.
And
so
if I can add just quickly, is that this goes to show you as well that when you're looking for quick fixes, it's very hard to get a quick fix because if you're not getting the generational talent in that draft, if you're not getting the Crosby, if you're not getting the McDavid, if you're not getting the McKinnon, and even at that, even getting the Crosby, even getting the McDavid, even getting the McKinnon, if we take a look at Pittsburgh, they had drafted Malkin at 2nd overall. The year before they had drafted Crosby, they had drafted Marc-Andre Fleury overall. The year before that, they had also had a draft where they had drafted, they also drafted Christopher Letang. There's other players that they drafted, but it's very hard to have a quick fix. The Colorado Avalanche drafted Nathan McKinnon at number 1 overall, but they had drafted Bowen Byron at number 4 overall. They had drafted Landeskog at 2 overall. They had drafted Rantanen at 10 overall. They had drafted Kyle McCarr at 4 overall. You can do this exercise. Quick fixes usually are almost impossible because not every year is there a generational player available. And even when there is, you still need help and you still need to draft other players.
Well, look at the Sharks now. So what happened is that at the time, Kent Hughes had said, I'm not drafting Slafkovsky for what he is now. It's for what he's going to be at some point. Now, the thing is, let's say you take Cooley. Okay, that's fine. So now you have Suzuki and Cooley. You have 2 great players. You have someone to play with Demidov. Well, first of all, you don't know 3 years down the road if you're going to get Bolduc. to match with Suzuki and Caulfield. And first of all, I prefer Slafkovsky, but let's say, for argument's sake, that Bolduc plays with them and he's successful. You don't know that. You also don't know who you're going to draft in 2023, who you're going to draft in 2024, and you're a little bit at the mercy of who's going to be available and the lottery. For instance, the Sharks, for 3 years in a row, they had 3 top 4 picks. They drafted Will Smith, Celebrini, and Michael Misa. Where's the franchise defenseman? Well, they couldn't, because who are they going to take if they don't take Celebrini? Lev Shunov? I don't think so.
Big drop off.
And then in 2023, they took Will Smith at 4. Okay, they could have taken Simashev, who went 6 for Utah, but
Or Reinbacher.
Or Reinbacher. That would have been an option. I like Reinbacher. Wasn't Simashev was lower on my list, but I like Reinbacher.
Or Wielander or Sandin Pelika.
Yeah, exactly. But then you don't have as many good forwards. Now it seems like they have too many forwards and not enough defense. Look, if you're going to draft like 3 years in a row, you're not going to be able to get all the players that you need to build a contender. But at some point, you're going to have to build a team and not just a collection of players. So this is a great point, because you remember the year that, and in hindsight, Edmonton was wrong, because they should have drafted some defensemen, but they just kept on drafting forwards all the time. Jason Bonsignor, Taylor Hall, Yakupov, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and well, obviously McDavid worked out great. Draisaitl worked out great when he was picked too, which I think was it third that he was picked, Draisaitl? But anyway, third
or fourth. But long story short, you don't know. You're right. Like when you're putting together a team, you don't know. So you pick forwards, and then you say, okay, we need a defenseman. But if in that year you have the 4th pick overall, and so that player, there's a forward available, but the defenseman, in other people's eyes, there's another 9 forwards that they would take ahead of that defenseman. It's a risky pick to take that defenseman at 4th overall, when most people have that defenseman at 14th overall on their list.
And last year,
in that case,
but
in that case, maybe one of the things you should do, if you already have stockpiled a lot of forwards, is trade your pick to actually move down in the draft and maybe being able to acquire another player, another prospect, another pick. Not all teams have the courage to do that.
And that's the problem. Courage is the word, because if it were the NFL, that it's done every year. Okay, I need a cornerback. I'm going to trade down 5 picks. I'm going to get this guy. I'm going to get an extra pick. And picks are more valuable in the NFL because the players play right away, and you have 22 roster spots to fill out, So hockey is a little bit different. But I do think that general managers in hockey are very, very conservative, because I feel that they're afraid that if they trade down, let's say from number 2 to number 5, that they're going to pass on a franchise player. And years down the road, they're going to be told, let's say for the Sharks, for instance, why didn't you draft Michael Misa? They
get crucified for it, and it might end up costing them their job.
Exactly. So if you take Michael Misa, well, it's the safe pick. You don't have your defenseman. You have a good forward. But then you're thinking, maybe I should have traded down to number 9. I would have gotten this in return, and I would have gotten my defenseman. Now, the Sharks got Sam Dickinson later in the draft in 2024 through another trade, but that's another story. We're talking top 5 picks here. So the Habs at the time, getting back to this Cooley thing, let's say they take Cooley. Slav is kind of a unicorn. He's a very, very particular player. He's the type of forward who might not get 70 or 80 points. But when you have a situation like the Habs do with Suzuki and Caulfield, who are not big players, well, Suzuki is stocky, but he's not like 6'4". You kind of need that kind of guy. Skilled, tough, and a guy who will create space for you. So he's the perfect fit. So when you build a team, you have to think of fits. Of course, Cooley with Demidov would have been fantastic. But look, in 3 drafts, you can't get everything. So at some point, you're going to have a hole, because let's say they drafted Cooley. Maybe they would have said, I wish we had a guy to play on the top line. Okay, Jean-Charles mentioned Bolduc. I don't know if Bolduc is a top line player. I think in my book, he's a second line player and a good one. So look, I think right now, the Habs need a top 2C, let's say, but they have a top power forward that they wouldn't have if they hadn't drafted him. So there's always going to be holes.
No, but listen, I love the conversation today. I think it's really stimulating. I'm going to tell you why. Because you can make great points on both sides of this debate. If you recall the draft, and if we can, Alexis Lavoie-Martel and Master Control and the Cavalleros as well, if you can bring up the draft, there you have it. Slafkovsky 1, Simon Nemec, the defenseman, goes number 2 to New Jersey. Logan Cooley goes number 3 to Arizona. Shane Wright went number 4 to Seattle. Cutter Gauthier went number 5 to Philadelphia. We'll just stop it there. Everyone else can see it. The chart is up. We have until picks from number 1 to 26, which 26 was the Canadiens' second pick overall that year, and they drafted forward Philip Michard. And then in the second round, they drafted Owen Beck at 33rd. And then, by the way, I think it was 33rd. And then they drafted Lane Hudson at 62nd. Okay. And the rest, as they say, is history. But if you recall the draft, there was footage on Habs TV where they brought us behind the scenes and they talked to all the scouts. And one of the scouts, and I think maybe it was, I could be wrong, but I think it was probably Chris Boucher in their analytics, who said, if drafting Slafkovsky, who's a big player, 6'3", 225, whatever he is, will stop us from absolutely drafting the big player at any other point, then I think it's a win, because some teams, when they draft middle of the pack, will always draft a big player. And coincidentally, it's funny, because they drafted Slafkovsky at first, they didn't mind at 62nd taking going with a guy like Lane Hudson, who's not a forward but doesn't have size, because when they looked at their team, they said, okay, you know what? We have a small team, but now we've just added a big body. And one of their scouts at the time also said the way he looked at Slafkovsky was a guy who was going to be a piece to the puzzle of forming a very competitive, maybe championship team one day. And you joined me on my show, my podcast in French on Wednesday morning, and you said something that I thought was really interesting. And I'll make you say it here. It had something to do with a famous team in the 80s that became a dynasty and a number 1 line that was the best line in hockey for several seasons.
Yeah, New York Islanders, late 70s, early 80s. Trottier, Bossy, Gillies. Now, Brian Trottier was not the fastest guy. He was not the flashiest guy, but he put up points. He was responsible defensively, and he made players around him better. So that's one element. Second element, Mike Bossy was a pure goal scorer. He was the best pure goal scorer of his generation. Thirdly, they had Clark Gillies. Clark Gillies didn't put up as many points as those 2 other guys, but he did play very good hockey, and he was a big, big presence on the ice. He was a bulldozer, and he created space for a guy like Bossy, who was not as strong physically, who was the target of many cheap shots. As you know, he had to retire after 9 years because of back problems.
Yes.
So I see similarities. I'm not saying the Habs are going to win 4 cups, okay? I'm not saying that Hall of Fame line, the Habs line would be a Hall of Fame line. Not saying that. But I see the way the line was built. And I see similarities between Trottier and Suzuki, Bossy and Caulfield, and Gillies and Slafkovsky. And that line stayed together for almost a decade, I would say. And they were one of the main reasons, with Dennis Potvin, the defenseman, why the Islanders won Stanley Cups. Because it was so complementary. Because even in the 70s, the Lemaire-Lafleur shot line, it was not built that way. in the Edmonton Oilers, Gretzky, Curry, and at some point Tikkanen. Not exactly the same thing. So that's why it reminded me of the New York Islanders line. And that's the point I'm making about picking Slafkovsky. Look, I had Slafkovsky at 1. I'm not trying to defend the pick because I had him at 1 because I love Logan Cooley. And I do think that Logan Cooley with the Habs would be spectacular. And with Demidov, it would be fireworks. But at some point, the way a team is built goes beyond how many spectacular players you have.
So I have the Hockey DB open right now in front of me. Clark Gillies was 6'3", like Slafkovsky, and was way over 200 pounds. The late Clark Gillies, by the way, very unfortunately, so left us way too early at age 67, I believe. But his first years in the National Hockey League in 74-75, he picked up 47 points, 61 points, 55 points, 85 points, and 91 points, which is amazing. But the following 4 years, 79-80, 80-81, 81-82, and 82-83, are the 4 years that they won their Stanley Cups, 4 straight years, 80, 81, 82, and 83. In those years, Clark Gillies put up 54 points, 78 points, 77 points, and 41 points.
Yeah, and
so there were years
back in the day, Tony, more goals were scored. In today's numbers, it's even less than what you just said.
So for those who say no chance that Slafkovsky can be a Clark Gillies, he definitely can.
Yeah.
He definitely can be a Clark Gillies. There's no doubt about it. He can. So now, you talked about Bolduc, and I want to talk about him, but not before I talk to you, of course, about another one of our sponsors, which is Energy Transportation Group, a leading asset-light 3PL that's driven to be different from cross-border freight between Canada, USA, and Mexico to coast-to-coast shipping in both Canada and the United States. Energy moves it all, fast, reliable, powered by tech that delivers smarter logistics. New real partner in transportation. Contact the team at sick@shipenergy.com and see how Energy Transportation Group is changing the freight game. All right, okay. You talked about Bolduc, and you said, for those who say that Bolduc can play wing with Suzuki and Caulfield, you prefer Slafkovsky. I think the stats are way in favor of Slafkovsky in the sense that last year it is the line that scored the most goals, 5v5 in the entire National Hockey League. And this year you see Slafkovsky's big body is a big net front presence. They got him playing in the bumper right now on the first wave of the power play. One's medium bro, one's little bro, one's big bro. They were talking about it. Slafkovsky let us in on that intel. They get along tremendously well on the ice, off the ice. They have all kinds of chemistry together. I almost feel like they were born to play with each other, right? What Slafkovsky brings to the table, Suzuki can't, and Caulfield can't. What Suzuki brings to the table, Caulfield can't, and Slafkovsky can't. And what Caulfield brings to the table, Suzuki can't, and Slafkovsky can't. So I think they were born to play with each other. Now, talk to me about why you said, you know what? I don't think Bolduc could be that guy.
Well, first of all, although Bolduc is a strong guy and he's not afraid to go into corners and everything, I do think, and he's a good offensive player, I do think that Slafkovsky is, well, first of all, he's even bigger. And second of all, I see Slafkovsky probably as a better goal scorer also. So that's the two main reasons. I like both players, but I just see Slafkovsky a notch above Bolduc, and that's why he was drafted number 1 and Bolduc was drafted number 16. And I think it's that's what it's, it's logical even 3 years later.
That's an interesting comment, by the way, though, when you say that. I see Slafkovsky as a better goal scorer than Bolduc, who was drafted 17th. Usually that's the case. First usually ends up having a better career than 17. But Bolduc scored over 50 goals a couple of times in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League and scored 19 goals last season, his rookie season for St. Louis, and got off to a tremendous start with the Canadiens, where I think he scored 4 goals in his first 4 road games in 4 separate games. The way Bolduc scores goals, he doesn't score goals like a regular third-line player. He scores goals. Yeah,
top 6 guy. He's a top 6 goal scorer. But there's something about Slafkovsky's release and shot, especially in the slot. That's why I give him the notch.
Wow. Really, eh?
Yeah, anyway, I just think he's the fit. He's the fit with Caulfield and Suzuki. Because
Built a little bit differently.
You probably noticed that as Slafkovsky is getting better, Caulfield and Suzuki are getting better. Because at first, when that duo was together, and that's why I really had doubts about Suzuki and Caulfield, I thought there was something missing on that line. And they could never find the right fit with them because they're not, like I say, they're under 6 feet tall. And you feel that these two guys, at some point, they could be neutralized. And because there were stretches a few years ago when Suzuki and Caulfield were playing together that, 5-6 games in a row, you wouldn't see them very much. Now this doesn't happen anymore. They might have an off game, which is normal in an 82-game season, but they don't have these stretches of 5, 6, 7 games where they're practically invisible. So and I think it's Slafkovsky.
So I'm going to talk to you about something that we haven't talked about yet. Logan Cooley has put up great stats. Once again, his stats last year were better than Juraj Slafkovsky's. His stats in his first season were better than Slafkovsky's first season. Mind you, Logan Cooley started 1 year later in the National Hockey League than Slafkovsky. Chances are Logan Cooley's probably going to put up more points than Juraj Slafkovsky will this year. And traditionally, centermen end up putting up more points than wingers. Traditionally, unless that winger's name is Nikita Kucherov, of course.
Yeah.
I think when all is said and done, and Slafkovsky's career will be over, or at least I hope to think this, I think we're going to remember him more as a big-time, clutch playoff performer.
Okay.
And we haven't seen that yet, and we don't know.
No, that remains to be seen because Utah hasn't made the playoffs in a million years, and Slafkovsky only had 1 round of playoffs in his 4-year career.
Yes.
But now that I think both teams are going to start making the playoffs on a more regular basis, I think we're going to be able to see who's more clutch. And look, you might be right. I mean, I'm not debating this. It's possible.
Now think about this, okay? Because once again, I think someone who says Cooley, they should have drafted. I think there's a difference between they should have drafted Cooley and who's the better player and who's going to be the better player. I think there's a difference in the two discussions.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Because I had Slav at number 1, but he was a much different player than Cooley. And I knew Cooley was going to score points, but I was wondering who's going to have the biggest contribution to his team. Yeah. And again, it depends on what team you fall. Maybe had Cooley gone to New Jersey, and I think that's the reason why they didn't take him. They already had Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier. So they probably figured, okay, we don't need 3 centermen.
Yeah.
I think that's a mistake. Because there was no franchise defenseman available. I like Nemitz, but it was no franchise defenseman. You take best player available. It doesn't matter if you have 2 centermen already. One of them can move to the wing. At some point, perhaps you can make a trade. But even if you don't want to make a trade, you can always switch from center to wing.
Now, and we'll end with this before I'll ask you one question about the starting goaltender on Saturday. I need you to think about this. When the Canadiens were in that war room and they were discussing the prospects and they tried to look in a crystal ball and visualize and take a look at who they thought these players could become 10, 15 years from now. If you visualize yourself and do the same exercise, Juraj Slafkovsky in 15 years, at his best, we all visualize the same thing, right? We all visualize a power forward, a modern day power forward who will be a member of that line for the next decade or so, that will contribute and help the Canadiens win a couple of Stanley Cups, that will go to the net, that will take players out, that will be in on the forecheck, that will cause turnovers, that will be a force to be reckoned with when he gets, he fills into his body. If you think of the body type and the intangibles and what he can be, you can probably say that in the Canadiens organization, they probably haven't had a guy like that since the Big M was acquired back in 1971.
Oh,
Frank Mahovlich.
okay. Yeah.
Right, because the guy that comes to mind,
And I saw Frank Mahovlich's 500 goal live at the Forum. I was 7 years old.
oh wow,
I
because
remember
the guy
that goal.
yeah.
I remember where I was sitting. Yeah.
Look. There's been some big guys who've played with the Canadiens, some good players, but the guy that probably comes to mind is the guy that was extremely clutch in 1993, and that was John Leclerc.
Yeah.
But the Canadiens ended up trading John Leclerc before John Leclerc ended up becoming John Leclerc on that famous Legion of Doom line with Eric Lindros and Mikael Renberg, and he had seasons of 50 goals.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't that guy with the Canadiens, but he was still very, very good. He was extremely important in that cup win in 93. So if Slafkovsky can become a better version of what Leclerc was when Leclerc was with the Canadiens,
Yeah.
you can probably say that the Canadiens haven't had that kind of size, strength, physicality, talent, and intangibles since Frank Mahovlich.
Makes sense. Makes sense because they didn't have it in the 70s, although they had a fantastic team, a very complete team. But no, they didn't have this. But I have one last point about Slafkovsky and Cooley, which is not often mentioned because obviously Cooley just signed his contract this year. But I find that when people analyze teams, they seem to forget that a team, a player and his contract are pretty much the same person, if you see my point. It's the same entity. Slav is costing 7.6. Cooley's costing 10. Who has the better value contract? Because Slafkovsky frees up 2.4 million compared with Cooley. And I often say that, would you rather have a 5 million guy who scores, 50 points, or a 9 million guy who scores 70?
It is a salary cap world. You're right.
It is a salary cap world.
It's a
So
good
I
question.
think the contract has to be taken into consideration also.
In ending, Canadiens announced earlier today Samuel Montembeault gets the start versus the Ottawa Senators Saturday night at the Bell Center. Your thoughts?
Well, very simple. The Habs don't have back-to-back games for a month. Good for them. But goalies need reps. So I do understand that Dobesh, is the hot guy right now. But if you don't play Montembeault, when are you going to play him? So I know every game's important, but in a way, you can't have Dobesh in net for 82 games. No back-to-backs. Look, let's give it a shot. I understand the decision.
It's an interesting decision, one that's going to be much talked about in the next couple of days and probably even after the game. Speaking of which, I'm going to do it right now with Stu Cowan of the Montreal Gazette and HockeyInsideOut.com. On that, I bid farewell. Simon Snake Boisvert, thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon.
See you next week, Tony.
Merci beaucoup. Le voilà. See you next week. We have our guy. Let's go to Stu Cowan.
Stu Cowan, presented by Au Noir, quality clothing for the modern man.
Oh, yeah, you know me. I'm all about confidence and style and making an impression. That's exactly what you get with Au Noir. Au Noir is every man's one-stop shop. Shirts, pants, polos, suits, or sports jackets. Everything's made for comfort with stretch and sophisticated details for the perfect fit. Whether you're going for a classic or bold look, heading to the office, a night out, or cheering for your team, Au Noir has you covered because once you go Au Noir, you never back. Huh? Isn't that the thing? Au Noir, it's all about the attitude. I love Au Noir. Stu Cowan, how are you?
I'm doing well, Tony. How are you?
Very good. Were you surprised when you found out earlier today that Samuel Montembeault is getting the start and goal versus the Ottawa Senators? Yes or no, and why?
Yes, I would have gone with Dobesh, but I understand why Marty is going back with Montembeault. I didn't think Marty would announce it today. I thought he might wait another day to avoid us, everybody talking about it now for another day. I thought he might have held off and announced it tomorrow. Good for him announcing it today. I mean, as he said, he said Sam didn't forget how to play in net. He's off to a tough start. No back-to-back games coming up, really to put him in there, put him in the home crowd. But boy, there's gonna be a lot of pressure on him Saturday night. I mean, if he lets in a couple of softies early, fans, we've seen what the fans, they've done it to Patrick Waugh, they've done it to Carey Price, they've done it to every goalie in the past, and Dobesh has become a fan favorite. I mean, I think it made Marty's decision easier. I mean, if Dobesh had hung on and had a shutout in Seattle, I don't see how you take him out after a shutout performance. So, they got 3 goals against him in the third period, not blaming him for those goals. But I think that made Marty's decision a little easier to go with Sam Montembeault. And as Marty said also after practice, he's been a while since he's played. He said time to work with the goalie coach, get his game hopefully back on track. And Sam Montembeault, it's hard not to like Sam Montembeault. Hopefully for him, he has a good game Saturday night and sort of stop this sort of goalie controversy that has started. But as Marty said, last week or the week before, I guess it was before they went on the road trip, you need 2 good goalies in the NHL today. And, Sam Montembeault, looking at his stats, the last 3 seasons, his save percentages were 901, 903, and 902. It's pretty consistent. I mean, that's not elite superstar Carey Price numbers, but you know what you're going to get from Sam Montembeault. And I think it's just a rough start he's got off to. And I agree with Marty. He hasn't forgotten how to play goal. But, boy, this is going to be maybe his most pressure-packed start with the Canadiens. Don't forget, he's also looking at the Olympics, right? Going back as probably the number 3 goalie again. Team Canada officials looking at him this year haven't liked what they've seen either.
No, Stu, there's an article on NHL.com, and this is the opinion of just 2 writers, of course. But on NHL.com, I don't know if you had a chance to see it earlier today, but the 2 writers actually put out their Team Canada predictions, and they have Jordan Binnington, Aiden Hill, and Logan Thompson.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me the way Montembeault played.
Yeah. By the way, they do have Nick Suzuki on the list for Hockey Canada. Now,
it doesn't surprise me either the way Nick Suzuki's playing.
Right. Now, there's a couple of there's some comments here that really stood out to me, and I want to tackle them one by one. You talked about the pressure. I was on La Poche Bleue last night with Maxime Lapierre and Pascal Leclerc. And, Pascal Leclerc is a former goaltender in the National Hockey League. Maxime Lapierre is obviously a former player. Gilbert Delorme was with me, a former player himself. So we were 4 in studio, and all 4 of us said that we would go with Dobish.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going with Montembeault. Max Lapierre said, I wouldn't give Samuel Montembeault, an arch rival in your division, on a Saturday night at the Bell Center, because if he gets lit up, this thing can explode now. Like if there was some talk and some controversy in the last week, imagine what it'll be if they lose 4-1 to the Ottawa Senators on Saturday night and he gives up some bad ones.
Yeah.
Now, the flip side of it is if they win 4-1 versus the Ottawa Senators and he stops 38 of 39, it's a great decision by him and this thing is over and everyone can move on. But Marty St. Louis, I don't think we should question any of his opinions, but because we're in the line of work that we are, and we talk for a living, let's have fun here. I almost feel that he's playing Montembeault versus the Ottawa Senators, an arch rival, the proximity between the 2 cities, a team in your conference, a team in your division, a team that you're going to battle with to make the playoffs. It almost seems that he wants to end this whole controversy thing right now and say to everybody, Sam is my number 1. You see, I'm playing him versus Ottawa. So now for everyone saying, hey, but St. Louis disrespected Samuel Montembeault, he's not treating him like the number 1. This is almost a statement. He is my number 1. I don't know if that's true or not, but...
Well, it's definitely... Talk about a confidence boost for Sam Montembeault that your coach is putting you in on a Saturday night against Ottawa at the Bell Center, knowing everything that we just talked about, knowing that if he lets in a couple of softies, this could get ugly on him. I just think it shows the confidence that Marty has in him, and understandably why, as I mentioned earlier, he's been a consistent goalie for the last 3 seasons, and he didn't forget how to play goal. He's had a few bad games, and it's really early in the season. I mean, he's played 5 games, 3.82 goals against average, 842 save percentage are horrible, right? But I think it just shows the confidence he has. And I think even more importantly, Tony, I think his teammates still have confidence in Sam Montembeault. They haven't given up on him. But that,
sure.
I have a column that's up on the Hockey Insider website now. I spoke with Dobish's Ohio State University hockey coach yesterday. And one of the things that really impressed him when he arrived at Ohio State, no more for football and hockey, was just the confidence that he had and how that rubbed off on his teammates. So if they can have confidence in 2 goals, this is a huge game early in the season, huge game. The fact that the Canadiens are 8-3, it's not the end of the world. If Montembeault does have a rough game and they lose, they've been off to a great start, and I think that probably factors into the decision also. But you got to have 2 goalies that you can count on. I mean, we saw, Caden Primo started last night in Toronto, got lit up again. Similar situation what it was last year with the Canadiens when he was here. So Dobish, shorter work sample for him.
Yeah.
But he has been confident since he came in here. He's played with confidence. His teammates have confidence in him, and that goes back to his days at Ohio State, which is what impressed his coach there.
Yeah.
And the thing with both of these goalies, they've got a good mentality to play in Montreal. They don't let things bother them too much. Sam was all smiles after practice today, answering questions from reporters and that, in a good mood. He was in a good mood the day after the last game when he didn't play very well. And you say that he's saying that Sam is his number one goalie, playing him, but you could also look at it and say, well, maybe Dobish getting back-to-back starts, which maybe we didn't expect on the road, could make him think that he's the number one goalie. But they're in a good situation if they can have a number one and a number 1A. And I think that's, in a perfect world, that's what Marty would like. But I'm repeating myself here, but I mean, Saturday is going to be a huge, huge game for
it is. Such a good guy for Samuel Montembeault. Everyone's pulling from. You brought up Dobish's name, and it's funny. You even brought up Caden Primo's name. They both, once upon a time, played for the Laval Rocket, as does Jacob Fowler right now, who, by the way, pitched a shutout last night in a 3-0 win over the Phantoms. And the Rocket will be back in action on Friday night at 7 p.m. Versus Rochester. And they're also going to be back at it on Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m. again versus the same opponent. And what's interesting about Friday night is obviously Friday, October 23rd. The Rocket is celebrating Halloween at Place Belle. Come in costume and enjoy the party. Tickets at rocketlaval.com. Tickets at rocketlaval.com.
Basically, if David Reinbacher plays also, they announced today that he's officially back with Laval.
Okay. So now, here's the thing, though. And once again, for the sake of discussion here, Marty's points are usually very consistent. There's a method to his madness, and everything he kind of does or says kind of makes sense, and it all adds up. Can you begin to explain to me, though, telling the media the other night, before you play Seattle, Dobish is in a great moment right now. I'd be very wise to go with him again. And you do, because he wanted the win, obviously. You stress urgency in training camp and preseason. You're trying to collect as many wins as possible because last year you did not. You only won 4 of your first 15. And you needed to go on an incredible run after the Four Nations face-off and finish strong and end up winning your final game of the regular season versus Carolina to make the playoffs, to the game after he plays and he wins to go back to the other guy once again now versus a conference and divisional opponent. 2 different messages, don't you find? Like it's
yes, but again, I mean, without, how much longer do you wait before you put him back in is the other question too, right? Before he sees game action, you're not really helping him find his game that way either. And the urgency, as he said, is there. But I mean, when you're 8-3, it's a little bit less urgent at this point. If you're going to, as I said, even if Montembeault has a bad game Saturday, and hopefully that doesn't happen, but if he does and they lose, they're 8-4, right? It's not the end of the world. And then I think you come back with Dobish and you play Dobish maybe 3 or 4 in a row to see how he can do. But I think it was a case of coming back home, give him a start at home, showing you have confidence in him, putting him in against Ottawa. As I said, a confidence boost for Sam Montembeault. Maybe he needs one right now. I mean, Marty reads guys really well, right? He can tell, he knows how to push buttons here and there. Mm-hmm. And maybe felt Montembeault just needed that bit of a confidence boost now and putting him in the net Saturday. And but he also be interesting to see if he plays really well Saturday. Do they come back with him on Tuesday, or do they go back to Dobish again and sort of play the 1 and 1A goalies?
All right, so we have some clips. Samuel Montembeault spoke to members of the media earlier today, but I believe most of the clips, if not maybe all of them, were in French. So let's hear Montembeault on his performances.
Non, c'est juste, normalement, des fois, un mauvais match, ça peut affecter la confiance ou peu importe, mais c'est juste, je pense que je collais, on a regardé sur vidéo, souvent, à les lancer, je shrinkais, ma position de base, je jouais plus petit, tu peut-être pensé trop, donc quand tu penses trop, évidemment, tu hésites plus, les mains sortent moins bien, donc c'est juste vraiment de retourner à la base. Comme j'ai dit, on a travaillé pendant une semaine, on a fait des bonnes choses, donc c'est de retourner jouer, puis de ne pas penser, puis juste relaxer, puis de rester au moment présent.
All right, that's the fastest I've ever heard an answer in a long time. I didn't understand one word that came out of his mouth, but anyway.
So fast in English and French. I laughed at Herb Zurkowski's interview one time. I think it was maybe the end of last season or his training camp this season. He said, slow down.
I think he said something to the effect of that he was looking smaller in his net. They did some video. They realized that he was looking smaller in the net. He was thinking more. And by thinking more, it was affecting his movements. And that's something that he's worked on. Speaking of work, he talked about his week with Montreal Canadiens goalie coach Éric Raymond.
Éric, c'est un entraîneur qui aime ça faire beaucoup de répétitions. Puisque quand il fait beaucoup de répétitions après ça dans les matchs, c'est devenu automatique. Donc, on a fait des bonnes reps pendant une semaine. Puis après ça, dans le prochain match que je vais avoir la chance de jouer, c'est juste d'aller là, de ne pas trop penser. Puis de vraiment juste relaxer, prendre un breather. Puis c'est juste faire les reps qu'on a fait.
All right, so he says that Éric Raymond is a guy that likes to work a lot, repetitions, doing the same things over and over and over again. He goes, in the last week, he goes, there was a lot of repetitions with Éric Raymond, and there was less thinking and more repetitions, and now we just have to be able to take that into the next game.
He's had a lot of time to work on his game, right? And before they went on the road, when I asked, Sam was talking about how his hands are too far in front of him, and he wasn't. That's what was making him play small. So he's had a lot of time to work with Éric Raymond. We'll see how it pays off.
Yeah, our third and final clip is not Samuel Montembeault, thank God. Martin Saint-Louis.
Sam va jouer samedi. C'est correct, là, on va pouvoir arrêter d'en parler. Hein? Non, c'est sûr. Non. Ben, c'est sûr. Tu sais, Sam, il n'a pas oublié comment jouer dans les nets, là. Tu sais, il y a un contexte attaché avec ça. C'est dur de, tu sais, comme la manière que Dobbs y joue, ça jette un petit peu de temps à Sam de continuer à travailler sur ses affaires. Mais je ne suis pas inquiète que Sam va arrêter des pucks, là. Tu sais, c'est un excellent gardien. Puis il va jouer samedi. Puis là, ça lui donne une très longue séquence de travailler sur ses affaires. Tu sais. Puis peut-être qu'on n'aurait pas ça si Dobbs il était pas au niveau où ce qui est présentement. Tu sais. Fait que Sam va jouer samedi.
Marty St. Louis wanted to get out of the way right away. Listen, Samuel Montembeault is going to play Saturday. And then he says, Samuel Montembeault didn't forget how to play hockey. What we had here is we had one goalie playing really well, and his performances were able to buy the other one time to get his game back. And if Dobish wasn't playing well, then Montembeault wouldn't have had that time. But because Dobish was playing well, Montembeault has that time. Do you think this was more of a question, once again, of putting Montembeault in after not playing 2 straight games, which is something that hasn't happened in a while in Montreal? A, or B, do you think it was putting him in so that he goes up against a divisional opponent and you try and nip this whole goalie controversy thing in the butt and that's your statement? Or do you think C, you're putting him in there because they probably didn't like the second goal or especially the third goal in on Dobish? And by the way, before you answer, former Montreal Canadiens goalie coach Stefan Waite on 98.5 FM radio said that after the Shane Wright goal, Dobish threw his arms up in the air and basically looked at his players, and Stefan Waite said, that's a no-no. You don't do that. That was his way of saying, that's on you. It's not on me. And he said, I wouldn't be surprised if they went up to him and they told him, don't do that. Yeah. So A, B, or C?
I noticed that too after the game, and that's a young goalie, right? I'm going to go with B because the way Marty answered the question, you could tell that he wants to try and nip this in the bud, right? The way
it sounded like that.
That's the way it was sort of had a little humor to it. And I was surprised he announced it today. I thought he would wait a day. I was like, we wouldn't be talking about it right now, or be speculating on what he might do. And I think he just wanted to nip it in the bud right there. And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, if Dobish got a shutout the other night, makes it a little bit more difficult to make that thing. But as you said, the fact Dobish played well gave him a chance to sit Montembeault for a while on the road and work with Éric Raymond a lot. And you go back to last season, mentioning Caden Primo. I mean, before they called up Dobish from Laval, Primo had played 21 out of 23 games because Marty couldn't trust the other goalie. And Marty doesn't forget stuff like that, right? And fans shouldn't forget that either. Like Sam Montembeault carried this team last season on his shoulders for a long period until they finally gave up on Primo and brought in Dobish. And Marty doesn't forget about that. And I don't think fans should forget about that either. And I think as much as I said I would have gone with Dobish Saturday night, I understand Marty's decision and I respect his decision. And I respect the way he handles his players by putting Montembeault back in and saying, look, I still have faith in you. Show me that I'm right. And let's stop this thing right now. Let's stop this goalie controversy right now and move on.
I think the question I asked with the opportunity to answer A, B, or C, and the way you answered it, your answer being B, that you believe the reason why he's in there more so than any other reason is because Marty wants to stop the whole goalie controversy thing right away by saying Saturday night at home, conference opponent, divisional opponent, rival, boom.
Yeah,
Montembeault's my guy. You see, there is no goalie controversy here. I think it's an interesting answer, and I think it has everyone right now on the YouTube, the Facebook, and the Twitter actually talking about it, discussing it, and wondering if that's their answer and going back and forth. I think there's a lot of reflection there. Stu Cowan, I want to thank you very much, as I want to thank all of our sponsors. Energy Transportation Group is one, Playground is another, Bittt is another, Betway is another, and of course, Stu Cowan is brought to you in part by Au Noir. Speaking of Betway, the Canadiens or the Senators on Saturday night. Go all the way with Betway. Get a deposit match, a bonus up to $300 on your first deposit. Scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in detail section to create an account. Redeem your welcome offer. Offer is only available for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offer is not available in Ontario. Must be 18 years of age and older. And please play responsibly. Stu, great talking with you. And we'll talk to you again sometime soon. Enjoy the hockey game on Saturday night, my friend.
All right, Tony. Have a good weekend.
All right. There you have it. Once again, the Laval Rocket on Friday night. And the Laval Rocket on Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m. The Montreal Canadiens on Saturday night. We are your voice of the Laval Rocket. I'm talking about we, the Sick Podcast. I'm talking about we, the company, Sick Media. Tune into the Laval Rocket game tomorrow. It's Halloween, by the way, Friday tomorrow. And the Rocket is celebrating Halloween at Place Belle in costume. And enjoy the party. Tickets at rocketlaval.com. Speaking of the Rocket website and the website of the sickpodcast.com, that's where you will be able to get a link, because we are the French digital audio voice of all Laval Rocket home games. We are, of course, Sick Media and the Sick Podcast. Special thanks to all of you and Alexis Lavoie-Martel and Sammy and Agnello Cavallaro at Master Control for being with me. Special thanks to our sponsors. If you like the podcast tonight, leave us a 5-star review. It's our way of feeling the love. We'll be back tomorrow night, same time, same place. If all goes well, Brian Wild will join me right here in our brand new studios of Ville Saint Laurent. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.